Okay.
God, we're old and irrelevant. That's why we're working in a basement full of dead animals. Okay.
This is the Guns Magazine podcast, episode number 5.
Say hello to my little friend here.
Hi there.
That's good shooting.
Why, thank you.
I won't be wronged. I won't be insulted. I won't be laid a hand on.
I'm sorry, did I say something to offend you?
Go ahead. Make my day.
Come on, no need for that.
This ain't Dodge City, and you ain't Bill Hickok.
All right, here we go with the Guns Magazine podcast. Hi there, I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent Wheat. Thanks for joining us as we talk to the interesting people who make up the world of shooting, hunting, and the firearms industry. Today, I'm talking with one of the most interesting and entertaining guys in the shooting business, Jim Shepard, the founder and publisher of the Outdoor Wire and several other news services. I've had the pleasure of talking to so many different people with incredible personal stories, but Jim Shepard's in a class by himself. He's been a journalist his entire life, and that career has taken him around the globe while working for everyone from the local TV station to the major networks. He also helped start a small-time operation you might have heard of, the Cable News Network, or CNN. Today, Jim runs the Outdoor Wire, a daily news service focusing on the shooting, hunting, and outdoor industry, and it wouldn't be hyperbole to say that almost everybody in our business reads the Wire daily. In our discussion today, Jim dishes his opinion on the liberal news media, the NRA, and even offers insight on the larger-than-life persona of Ted Turner and his former wife, Jane Fonda. I'll have to say that if Jim mentions he once caddied for the Dalai Lama at Pebble Beach, I just have to believe him because it undoubtedly would be true. Now here's my chat with the one-of-a-kind Jim Shepard. Well, here we are again, another issue of the Guns Magazine podcast, and today I have a raconteur, a storyteller, a man about town, and he's rolling his eyes clear out of his head. We're talking to the illustrious Jim Shepard. Welcome, Jim, to the Guns podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here so far.
Well, so to give a little introduction of Jim, he's not super well known among rank and file gun owners, but his work is very important and he's known by everybody in the gun industry, and his legend precedes him. Jim is the publisher of the Outdoor Wire, which is, I would say, is the cornerstone industry publication. It comes out every day through every business day.
Right.
And it is a very important part of the firearms industry where you see where all your friends have left and gone to and all the new toys that are coming out, and it's a critical piece of what we do. But beyond that, Jim, to say he's led an interesting life is quite an understatement. So, Jim, let's start from the beginning. You were part of the original crew of Cable News Network, CNN.
Yes, I was. We'll be celebrating the 40th year on June 1st of this year of CNN. With any luck at all, they'll have 40 viewers by then, the way they're going.
and Jim's a little opinionated, too.
Well, I've never been short of opinions. Facts have held me back at different times. But, yeah, I was one of the originals that was hired at CNN, and there were 9 of us, I think, originally hired, and we brought on everybody else and went on the air, and that was the best crazy 5 years of my life as far as journalism, because
it almost sounds like it should be a movie.
Nobody'd believe it. The good stories never get on air, but they'd be good, really good in a movie. But we started out, and we were called everything from Chicken Noodle News to the Commie News. No, that was last year. The Commie News Network, the College News Network, because if you got out of school and you wanted to work in television and you couldn't get hired in a real job and were willing to work for $3.85 an hour, CNN would take you.
Wow.
And we brought in some interesting people. But over those years, we did a lot of things. There were no rules. Everything we did was pretty much new. And for somebody who was 28 years old then, that was amazing, because I'd already been at the real networks, and I knew how little fun that was.
Yeah.
And the chance to go in and do something new was just too much to pass up, even though a lot of people did, apparently, or I wouldn't have gotten hired. So, yeah, it was an adventure.
So CNN literally is like a spider web circling the globe. Was that the intent from the get-go?
That was always the intent. Where they've gotten away from the mission was, it was very clear from our very beginning that the only star CNN was going to have was the news. And now everybody is building their personal brand, and they have their publicist and all that. And I left in 1985. Mrs. Gandhi and I left CNN the same day. She left Earth. I just left Atlanta.
Okay.
And it was because I could see we were already starting to get like everybody else. We were starting to, what are the big guys doing?
Right.
When we started, we counter-programmed. Whatever the news lead was at ABC and CBS and NBC, we went with something else because we wanted to tell my mom, the fourth grade school teacher, and my dad, the maintenance supervisor, news that was important to them. Mm-hmm. They've gotten away from that. They've lost their soul. They've lost their way. Yeah. And I, I'm not ashamed to say that I believe that. I'm also not ashamed to say I think I'm qualified to make that judgment.
Yeah. So, okay, got to ask, dish dirt on celebrities, Ted Turner, and of course we know Jane Fonda's politics, but what kind of guy is Ted Turner, and what is his political outlook?
Ted's political outlook is what's good for me is good for America.
Okay.
Pretty much like every rich eccentric.
There you go.
And working for Ted was an experience.
I bet.
Because it was trying to, control the uncontrollable.
Yeah.
He always did things that were different from everyone else. Very, very intelligent man. Actually very well-read. Very literate. Mm-hmm. You would never know it to talk to him because he sounds like an idiot most of the time, and he thing that he used to do.
No, really, what do you think? What do you feel there?
No,
Jim?
I mean, I love him to death. I would do anything on earth for him, but I have wanted to strangle him a number of times in the last 4 years. And we agreed to disagree on some of his things. But I said to Ted decades ago, don't ever sell CNN. He said, well, I could get a lot of money for it one day. And I said, then all you're going to be is another eccentric rich guy. And now he's a guy who still has a message, but has no method to get it out there.
Right.
And he's pretty much irrelevant. He's an older guy. Now he's busy buying every piece of available land in the West and hunting and fishing and all those things that you would think he'd be against because he's so green in his noggin. But he's, he loves to hunt, he loves to fish, and Bo and Rhett, the kids, they love the outdoors. He owns American Bison Company, and, he's a conservationist for real.
Yeah.
The $1 billion he gave to the UN, he and I don't ever talk about.
So how does he reconcile his hunting and the Second Amendment?
I don't know. I've never had that conversation with him, and I'm never going to because it wouldn't end well. I don't think he has a problem with the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
I've never heard him say we don't. Now, he may come out and say, we need to find out what's causing all these things, and we need to stop it.
Sure.
Well, in his mind, that's a mission statement.
Right.
That's as deeply as he's considered it.
I see.
You got to remember, this is the same man who said he could solve black unemployment, the energy crisis, and the racetrack missile all at the same time. The controversy over where to put the racetrack missile system. He was going to hire unemployed young blacks to pull rail cars around America with racetrack missiles on them. This is not a well-considered opinion, but it was the front page of the Chicago Trib that I had to try to explain one time. So you can't always, read a lot into it. I mean,
sure.
I'll see him June 1st of 20, and he's in his 80s. We may never see each other again.
Yeah.
So I want to see him, and I want to talk to him as somebody who is a part of a special part of my life. But politically, we're about as far away as the East is from the West.
I would say so. So on that note, let's shift gears. The Outdoor Wire, it is arguably the cornerstone business-to-business media in the shooting business. How did it all come about?
It's Tiger Woods' fault. Now, that may
Of course it was.
That sounds funny, but I was in the golf business before I got into the outdoor space. And we had a golf wire that was doing very well, and I had a television production company and produced golf commercials for Nike and Whedon and Kennedy, and their star, of course, was Tiger. Mm-hmm. We were shooting some commercials the week after the PGA Merchandise Show. We hit a weather delay of 2 days. And when we got done, Tiger said, "Are you going to the gun show?" And I said, "The gun show?" He said, "Well, I know you like to shoot and that sort of stuff." And he said, "There's a big gun show here this weekend." We were in Orlando. It was the last time the PGA, or the SHOT Show was in Orlando. And one of the crew guys said, no, it's not a gun show. It's a SHOT Show." And I said, "What's SHOT Show?" And he explained it was the largest. I said, "Well, it's sort of like the PGA Merchandise Show." And he said, yeah. I said, "Wow, that sounds pretty interesting."
Yeah.
Well, I had a friend who had been on a PGA Tour committee with me, Lori Lee Dovey. A lot of people, older people in the industry, will know Lori Lee's name. Lori Lee, I called on the phone and I said, "Hey, this SHOT Show thing." She said, "You would love that." I said, "Well, can you vouch for me, and how do I get a credential?" And I got one, and I went and I walked into the same room we used for the media center for the PGA show, and all I saw was mounds of paper, reams and reams and reams of paper, because the outdoor industry was still handing out catalogs and still putting press releases on paper. And at the PGA show, I picked up 2 CDs, and that had everything on it that I needed. And I thought, wow. And I went out to the show floor, and the first thing I thought was Christmas. Christmas, ultimate Christmas. This is too much for me.
Yeah.
And I looked, and I saw that nobody was doing anything to deliver a message in a timely manner. Everything came out in a magazine, on a month delay. Well, that's history. That's not news.
Yeah.
So I went back to the press center, and there was one CD that just happened to be from Smith & Wesson, had a picture of a big honking handgun on the front of it. And I went back to my hotel, and I had a template for the golf wire, and I just took golf out and typed in outdoor, put that picture and 2 paragraphs I typed in, and then a lot of the lorem ipsum dolor space saver stuff under it. I went back the next day and I said, I think this industry needs a daily news service. Everybody goes, "That's the craziest thing I've ever heard." I said, "Well, I think it's a good idea." I said, "Well, if you're going to do that," I said, "I'd do it on the internet, I'd do it via email, and I'd do it every day to subscribers." He said, "Well, what would it look like?" And I would raise my laptop up, and they'd get big eyes, and their mouths would fly open, and then I'd close it because I didn't want them to see there wasn't really anything there. And I collected 43 business cards from people who said I'd be interested in that. I went back and I told my business partner, "We're starting an outdoor wire." And he goes, "You're starting an outdoor wire. I'm staying in the golf space." I'm like, "Okay, well, we ought to stay there where we belong." And that's how we got started. It was easier to start it than to study it.
Right. So you were the guy that basically created the whole thing, and now there's actually a couple that are similar, but you are the 900-pound gorilla in the space.
Well, being there first has a big advantage.
Sure.
And a lot of these people are all hung up on their metrics and their engagements and all the other stuff, and people will come to me all the time and they say, "Well, what do you say about these people who are telling me all these things?" I said, "They're selling tissues and I'm Kleenex."
That's a good analogy.
I said, there was no business till I started it. And for a lot of years, I didn't get any cooperation from the agencies because they did not like me.
Sure.
I caused them to have to do a lot more work for the same amount of money.
Yeah.
That does not make you popular. Machiavelli said a couple of years ago, nobody is quite so hated as someone who brings a necessary change.
Yes.
And it was time for the industry to catch up. And it's especially critical now because we're at a juncture in our society where we have to be able to get information in a timely manner.
Yeah.
Where I'm concerned is we don't always have the ability to discern good information from bad information, which brings me to the internet. It's funny. I knew we'd get there sooner or later. The internet is a wonderful library of information without a Dewey Decimal System. There's no way to find what's good and what's not good. You just find.
Right.
And it's up to you to discern. I've always believed, and will believe, I hope, till my last breath, that if you give good people good information, they'll ultimately make the right decision. Because good people are, by definition, good people. The American people get criticized for a lot of stuff. We get blamed for a lot of bad things that happen. And, I hear every day, well, if we hadn't meddled in this and we hadn't meddled in that. I wrote a 9/11 column, which, since we happen to be talking on 9/11, that ran today, that said everybody has lost sight of the fact that if the United States chose to rule the world, we already would.
Exactly.
We would not be helping, we would be dictating terms to people.
Yep.
And yet we still do good things and get bad things in return. Well, it's time for us to be a little more discerning about that. And, Khrushchev said, I'll sell you the rope that you'll hang yourself with. Well, he was early, but he's about there, because we started to worry about things that make us retrocranially inverted. We're kind of living upside down. Right is wrong, black is white, yellow is green.
Exactly.
You can't, right's still right, wrong's still wrong.
Yep.
And there are shades of right and there are shades of wrong. But when it ultimately comes down to it, there are things that are right and there are things that are wrong. And Americans have been pretty good at staying on that plumb line. Once you start to wiggle that line, everything changes.
Yeah. And don't you think, going back to the internet, the tail's wagging the dog at this point? Because, I do a daily news scan, and, it's comical. Our president certainly has his shortcomings, but to read the quote-unquote popular press, you would think he's been implicated in a liquor store robbery. It's the most fringe voices, typically from the progressive side of the coin, but also it happens on the right. But those are the voices that are getting all the attention. The noise, the signal-to-noise ratio has gotten so large that if you just take everything you read at face value, our country's doomed in about the next 15 minutes. And that's not really the case the way it is on the ground with good Americans like we're seeing here every day in Illinois. So,
despite the fact that the Looney Tunes, the minority of Illinois, runs the state.
Absolutely.
It just happens to be what they call demographic huddling. They're all up there together.
Yep.
And, California is not going to fall in the Pacific Ocean. However, if Chicago fell into Lake Michigan, I don't think that would be necessarily a bad thing to happen. But my business partner's from Chicago, so I'm going to hear about that.
Sure.
But I'm not saying Chicagoans are bad people. And you said the tail wags the dog. No, the flea is wagging the dog at this point. It's not even the tail.
Yeah.
The tail doesn't have anything anymore. He's just going where he's flipped. And the squeaky wheels, when I was growing up, either got greased or got slapped until they got quiet.
Right.
And that's not acceptable anymore. That's not, I never got a participation award. I never wanted a participation award. I wanted to win at something. Now we're telling people winning is a bad thing.
Right.
Really? Wow. Okay. Well, I guess I'm a bad person because I still like to win.
Well, I was going to say, and myself and all my friends, we still value stuff like that. But again, if you read if you read the popular press, it just seems like those are crazy values that only me and maybe one or two other people hold, and that's absolutely not the case at all.
When we started the Outdoor Wire, right at 20 years ago, a guy sent me a book that he had written that was, this is where we're headed. And it was a book where we had gotten to the point that we were giving animals citizen rights.
Right.
That's not nearly so funny as it used to be. If you watch the movie from the Patty Chayefsky book, Network, it was absurd when it came out. It's like watching the channel today.
Yeah.
Everything from Sybil the Soothsayer to all of the other reality shows and all these crazy things that are going on. And unfortunately, if you read any history, that is, as they say in a historical concept, generally the last gasp of the dying mule.
Yeah.
It's bred in circuses. I watched The Bachelorette and The Bachelor because
I'm sorry.
I need something to keep me awake at night, and thinking that this is what the next generation's really like will keep you up at night.
Okay, good point.
Or it will force you to only sleep in the daytime.
I'll have to try that, yeah.
But, it's just like, how absurd can we possibly be? Again, right is wrong, wrong is right, black is white, up is down.
Yeah.
No, north is still north, south is still south. And if you try to navigate any other way, you're lost.
Yeah. You are literally an insider, quote unquote. You've worked, you helped start CNN, you worked for PBS, you've worked for local news, you work for network news. You're the
Let's
guy.
not forget I'm one of the Golf Channel founders, too, while we're giving the dog his due here.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So you've got a lot of friends, network folks, the mass media type of folks. So what are their political leanings, and is there some grand conspiracy to subvert all that is good, or is it just simply the chase or a loss of ethics on the part of journalists? I mean, you tell me.
That's a hard one, because I have to judge friends to do that. It's the problem that we all suffer, which is we gradually ramp up the discourse because we, by and large, only talk to people who believe what we believe.
Right.
It's like guys sitting around in a bar or girls sitting around together in a whatever the clatch is that you want to call it. The stories get wilder and more absurd, and they get higher and less founded in fact and more founded in absurdity. There's also a lot of just, Brent, I guess the best way to put it is liberal guilt.
Now,
Now,
old liberal guilt.
Well, but this bears a little amplification. When I got into the news business, I was never the best at what I did. I was always working to perfect my craft. I was always willing to do whatever it did.
Sure.
And I got very lucky. I think I got very lucky because I worked everybody else to death. That's the American ethic. If you work harder and longer, you'll be a success.
Yeah.
If you're chasing what you love.
Yes.
If you're trying to do something you don't care anything about, you're going to not be very good at it and going to be terribly unhappy at it. Well, a lot of people catch a lot of breaks in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with people who were better journalists than me that still never got out of local news.
Yeah.
They wanted out, they never got out. Because they wanted out so desperately, that's all they could focus on. They never focused on doing good work.
Right.
Other people got out because they looked good, they sounded good, they could read a beer label and make it sound like the Gettysburg Address, and they get these jobs. And this job begats that job, begats the other job, and suddenly they're at the networks. And they're making all this money, and they know they're not the best at their craft. So they feel guilty. And they feel guilty that someone's been left behind, or not guilty enough to give up the job,
sure.
but they're a better qualified person.
Yeah.
That's never going to happen because this is my career and I am driven.
But I will feel bad.
And it causes them to fringe out a little bit.
Yeah.
And when that happens, the next thing you know, they're hanging with movie people.
Yeah.
And the movie people, they live in fantasy land. They have no idea what real life is like.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they all talk to each other. And suddenly, all the psychobabble starts to make sense, and they believe that what they wear on the air is really more important than what they say, and they get a publicist, they have an agent. I had an agent. That's the most absurd thing I could ever say about life. I had an agent, and she got me some good jobs. But she made me crazy, too, because as soon as I got to the point I didn't need her, I didn't need her.
Did you have a stylist, though? Did you have your colors
No,
done?
I had a wig.
Did you really?
I did wear a wig. When I was a correspondent, it was required to have hair.
Wow.
So I had
and you're not the most hirsute person on the planet.
I am follically challenged and have been for quite a few years, and I am quite comfortable with that. But I used to have a rug. I called it Roadkill. I traveled with it in a box, in a bag, and when it came time to do the stand-ups, I would grab old Roadkill out, give it a shake, slap it on my forehead. do my stand-up, and the minute the video guy and the audio guy said the take was good, I ripped it off, threw it back in the box, and we went down the highway.
Did your cameraman ever start snickering under his breath during the shot?
Hey, I'm more of a cameraman than I am a talent, if the truth be told. But I was a decent talent. I was a good reporter.
Yeah.
So, they were willing to overlook some of my little quirks. One was a hairpiece named Roadkill.
No, wow.
I used to laugh. I used to go give speeches, and people would say, well, you don't look like you do on TV. And I'd say, just a minute. I'd grab it out from under the lectern, slap it on my forehead, and I said, here I am, the two-tone Chevy. Wow. Because it did not match my hair, but it did not matter on television.
So are there pictures of that somewhere out on the interweb?
Some dark corner somewhere. I have pictures of it somewhere.
Oh, I got to see that.
I showed my daughters a picture of me with shoulder-length hair.
Really?
And it was horrifying. They were horrified. I was nauseous at the shirt, but it was Paisley. It was a Paisley time.
Yeah.
It was a Paisley time with at least it wasn't a Nehru collar. They probably would have had me institutionalized. But yeah, TV's not real world. It's
right.
Nothing real. And what people forget is that little 22 minutes of local news or that 22 minutes of national news that you can at the end of the day. It's not even a cliff note. That's a cliff paragraph about what's going on.
Yeah.
And you didn't used to have the ability to get more information than you can absorb. Mm-hmm. Now you've got so much information. Saul Wertzman wrote a book several years ago called Information Overload. People were anxious because they didn't know what they could believe. Wertzman wrote this book before the Internet.
Oh, my.
Now you can't imagine how stressed people are.
Well, sure.
They're obsessed, as my British friends say, you Yanks are obsessed with being in touch, but you have nothing to say. And he's right. We're so busy, we're so absorbed and self-absorbed and all that we forget. All of this is not the same stuff. The information on the Internet's like a potato chip. You can eat all of them you want, but none of them are good for you ultimately. You have to eat a little healthier than that. So you have to vet your information. I start my day every day the same way. I read international news, I read national news, and then I read local news. Then I throw it all out and start over because now I have a baseline of what I think is really going on.
Yep.
And you can't do it. If you're out there, if you're the person out there who's a closet CNN reader, go read Fox News just to get a little balance.
Exactly.
I didn't say fair and balance. I just said to get a little balance. There's two sides of every coin, and which brings me to the fact that everybody wants to control our guns. They don't need to control the guns. They need to control the nuts behind the bolts.
Yep.
The guns are not the problem any more than a hammer bends a nail. It's a bad craftsman bends the nail.
Yep.
The hammer doesn't do it.
What's it going to take to make the great unwashed masses, so to speak? I mean, we get that. We're preaching to the choir here. What's it going to take to get them, the American public, to realize, yeah, it's a people problem. It's not a weapon problem.
I'm afraid until they're defenseless against evil, they're not going to see what's happening. They're really not going to get it until it's too late because they're not getting the message in a palatable form.
Ah.
And which brings me to the question of everybody says fake news, fake news, fake news. It's not fake news. It's biased news.
Correct.
And you have to get by the bias you have against Anderson Cooper,
yeah,
or whomever the person telling you something you don't want to hear is, and look at the validity of the news.
Mm-hmm.
The facts are always the facts of the matter, and you can find the facts. You just have to sort through the emotion to get to them.
Yes.
Unfortunately, for those of us who are Second Amendment fans, logic usually gets trumped by emotion.
Sure.
And some of these people are so busy feeling they've stopped thinking.
Yeah.
Look, there's a battle, a cultural battle being fought. I like to think a lot of us are on the front lines. I also think a lot of us are unprepared for war.
Yeah, sadly.
And you don't win arguments getting angry and spitting back at people, and you don't win arguments by giving people talking points.
Yeah.
You win arguments by being your truth.
Yes.
You win an argument by being consistent with what you're doing. You win a war for people's hearts and minds by showing them your heart and your mind.
Great point. And you know, this leads into our next topic, the whole NRA fiasco. You've been you've been in one of the high bleacher seats on that one. You know, your opinion is probably not popular with anybody on either side of any of this argument, but you know, you are one of the most quoted observers on the subject. How do you explain it to somebody that really wants to understand what is going on with the NRA?
Well, you used a pejorative in there, a lot of the garbage that you're hearing. The unfortunate thing is, it's not garbage, it's just trashy behavior.
True.
The unfortunate thing is, there is a them and us mentality at the National Rifle Association now. There are the anointed and the rest of us.
Right.
The problem is there are 5 million plus members of the NRA. 3.75 or more of them don't believe there's a problem because of who's telling them there's a problem.
Yeah.
The strength of the NRA is not the people who live in Virginia. And if 5 million people are only capable of being represented by one person, we have a very fundamental problem.
Yeah.
I will say this, the only time I've ever said this in public, I think it's time for leadership change. Now, what does that mean? It does not mean the French Revolution. It does not mean Madame Defarge drops a stitch and someone goes to the guillotine. It's time for some fundamental change because there have been abuses. And I think anybody who is capable of reading See Dick Run should be able to figure that out. When the attorneys general in 2 different places are running investigations that are counter of each other and yet run parallel tracks, when the board of directors of an organization is so torn apart that they're quitting, when there are questions of miss, and non-feasance that are part and parcel of lawsuits between the organization and the people that have pretty much guided the organization for decades, something's wrong. The apple's good, but the core may be rotten.
Yeah. Yep.
Doesn't mean you can't, as my grandma used to say, don't throw the whole apple out, just got a bruise. Cut the bruise out, save the apple.
Yeah. And, you know, that's something that I'm hearing more frequently, and I wrote about it recently. When a leader becomes so toxic to an organization, whether it's justified or not, you know, we're not arguing that, but when somebody becomes almost a caricature or a lightning rod, maybe it is time for that leader to go away.
I'm a business reporter. For 50 years, that's really been where I found the answers to everything, was you followed the money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that sounds like I'm about to say something inflammatory about the NRA. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say I've watched a lot of corporations go up, and I've watched a lot of corporations go down. I've watched the same CEO in both scenarios. And the answer to that is he does a magnificent job until he doesn't.
Yeah.
And then it's time for him to go, or her to go. You have to determine, where is my threshold of pain? I am way beyond the threshold of pain. We are staring down the gun barrel of the 2020 election cycle. And I know everybody who sends you a letter wanting money or votes tells you this is the most critical election of our lifetimes. I think that's probably closer to true than not this year. It's very important because we're not arguing for power in Washington. We're fighting for the soul of this country.
Yes.
I am tired of my core beliefs being on trial. I am tired of being told that I'm bad when I've done good things for people and they've spit on me. I'm tired of being told right is wrong, yes is no, up is down, black is white, And it doesn't mean the people that are telling me they're that are bad people. It just means the wrong people are being paid attention to.
Yep.
All we need is for good people to do what they know is the right thing.
Yep.
Everybody who hears this has the power to change everything. The world, the country. They can change their town, they can change their home, they can change their state, they can change their whole nation, and we can change the world if we wanted to do it. We just have to do it.
That great silent majority. That term was coined, 50, 70 years ago?
Yeah.
It's true, though.
Sure.
That's what's amazing to me. I'm blessed that I travel all over the country, and I talk to folks all across the country daily, and I still haven't figured out who those folks are talking about. Everybody I talk to in the gun business, the gun owners, they're good folks, and they believe in the right stuff. Taking care of your family, your friends, your community, all those good things. And I've not figured out why I am officially labeled a domestic terrorist by the San Francisco Board of Regents.
Well, I'm going to be out there a week from Saturday, and I plan to ask a couple of them that very same question.
That'll be a little awkward.
Do I look like a terrorist to you? Well, if you're a Twinkie, I might be a terrorist, but that's about it. And how did we get here? We got here the same way the animal rights people hijacked conservation. Mm-hmm. We got together in the 70s, and we passed all these conservation measures, and then, by God, we went fishing and hunting and left the place unattended, and it got hijacked by the eco-terrorists.
Good point. Well, we've been here at another writers' event. Fortunately, didn't fall and break anything this time.
Well, that's true.
Am I not supposed to tell that story?
No, I'm sure you're going to tell that I did manage to cut myself playing with a knife a while ago.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that, too.
My own knife, which is the disgusting part about it.
Well, we're passing around knives, and I look over, and Jim's got this kind of look on his face, and I see all this blood dripping down his hand, and I thought, usually I'm the guy that does that, so thank you for taking up that role.
Well, don't be that guy. You can't always be that guy, not if I'm there. Yeah, the fun thing about writer events is it's a good time to sit around with people, and no subject is out of bounds. There's some subjects are in poor taste, but they're not out of it. But we get to talk about things like this, things that we're concerned about. And a lot of us operate sort of in a bell jar. We don't really get to interact with each other the way we should. And that's another reason we're in the situation we're in. People don't talk to a lot of people like they used to. Do you know your neighbors? When I see them, do I know my neighbors? No, not like I used to know my neighbors. We don't play cards together. We don't ride bikes together. No, we're kind of isolated out there in our own little tube of influence, and it gives us a chance to open up our eyes. It also gives us a chance to see a lot of the new cool stuff, which is why you love this job.
Oh, yeah.
Let's be honest. That's the fun part of this business. But the other part of this business is we get accused of shilling for the manufacturers.
I hear it every day.
And I want to address that. That's not true. I will say this. All of us, all of the manufacturers, and all of our readers are on the same side.
Yep.
Don't confuse the fact I choose not to waste your time telling you about something I think is a substandard product to mean that I'm shilling for the ones I do write about. I'm telling you about the things that I would like to have if it were me. My opinion is worth just about as much right now as it would be if we were here in person. Yeah. I'm not giving you money, you're not giving me money. We're just talking about stuff. I'm just another guy's opinion. If you're interested in it, here's something I think you might find interesting.
Exactly.
And that's the way you need to look at it. Is there a best bullet? Yes, the last one I hit what I was aiming with.
Yep.
Is there a worst one? Yeah, the worst airline in America is the last one that delayed me.
Yeah.
Don't think like it's a big conspiracy to con you out of anything. Think of it as people who are suggestion things. We're not saying there's a well, I guess we do have best of lists and all that stuff, but that's just for conversation.
Sure. And that's what a good story should tell folks. And I get the comment every day of, well, why don't you tell all the bad stuff? Well, why would I waste your time and my valuable real estate?
Because
those dead trees are pretty expensive.
Because ink and paper cost money.
Exactly.
And zeros and ones are cheap.
Yeah.
But my time's not. I've only got so much of it left.
Yep. And the other fact, and you and I talked about this yesterday, We are living in the golden times. There's very few things on the market right now, by and large, that are junk or inferior. I mean, the marketplace is pretty good about if something is a solution in search of a problem or just a poor quality piece, it doesn't last very long.
One of the manufacturers yesterday said to me, it is inconceivable to me that the midline optics are as good as they are compared to what it used to cost to get the same look.
Yep.
And I said, how do you do that? How do you attribute that? He said, it's technology, pure and simple. Mm-hmm. Science is advanced, technology is advanced, manufacturing has advanced. It doesn't take the kind of hand fitting it used to take to make the kind of things that we make today. It is the golden age, absolutely the golden age. You can buy a rifle off the shelf, take it out in the field with just the sights that are on it, and harvest an animal at distances that were impossible a few years ago. Does that mean I'm shooting 675 yards open sights? I'm not shooting 175 yards open sights. You are the only person that can judge what your maximum distance is. You owe it to yourself to be honest about it.
Yeah.
I used to say about golf, don't remember the biggest 6-iron you ever hit over water. Remember all of the other ones. The big one will come one day, but it'll be a surprise just like it was then. If you want to hit a 6-iron like John Daly, try to lay up short of water.
Well, Jim, it's been great talking to you. We've had a lot of fun here. It was fun watching you compete in our 3-gun competition yesterday.
Thank you. Not often anybody misses at 10 yards twice with a shotgun.
With a shotgun. It was spectacular. But
it was one of the more amusing things I've ever seen up close and personal. Lord.
Even gun riders, we don't hit every time. Well,
now,
some claim they do, but
we know better than that. That's fake news.
Yeah.
The day I don't miss, don't worry, I'll tell you about it. You won't have to hear about it secondhand. It is a fact. All these guys that shoot on television, the dings come later. Let's be honest about it. We've all cut things together. We're supposed to look like we can shoot quarter-inch groups at 100 miles. We can't. We're human just like everybody else, a little more human than a lot of people, and we put performance pressure on each other.
Oh, no, I hadn't noticed that. All the smack talk when we were doing the 3-gun event, it was
when
hateful.
You're smack talking yourself in the middle of your run is not a good thing.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, we're just regular folks like everybody else.
Yeah.
We love what we do. We're blessed to be able to do it.
No kidding.
And we value everybody who's wasting their time listening to this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't tell them that often.
Wasting their time? No.
Sure we are. Sure. It's just 2 old guys sitting around in a basement surrounded by dead animals.
Yeah. What a terrible way to spend an afternoon, right?
Really.
I think it's pretty cool.
100 degrees outside. It's not so bad down here in the cool.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Jim, it's been great catching up with you. It's been great shooting with you, and it's been great talking to you. If folks are interested in the Outdoor Wire, how do they find out more about it?
Spot the plug. That's easy. You can go to the internet and just type in The Outdoor Wire, and that sucker will pop up in the search engine.
Well, there you go.
And the subscription, I'm going to give you a free limited time only, like forever. Put your email address in and say, I want to get the wire, and you will. And I will make you a promise. I will renew a promise I made nearly 20 years ago. We don't buy, sell, barter, solicit, or share your information with anyone.
Yeah.
Anymore, your name is worth more than probably what I put together, but that's not the promise I made. You're not going to get anything from us except the news. If you get something that purports to be something else, it's not from us.
Well, I got to say, I almost hate to share that with people because that's one of my secrets as an editor is we read the Outdoor Wire every day to find out what's going on.
And the funny thing is I never designed it to go to people. I designed it to go to editors.
Yeah.
It was going to be a news service for the industry.
Yeah.
And somehow a couple of 100,000 people heard it and got it. And, well, if it's free, what's it cost? Zeros and ones are cheap.
What a terrible problem to have, Jim. Well, you have you're leaving shortly, heading back to your home base in beautiful Nashville, Tennessee. Tennessee.
Yes, sir, buddy.
And so we hope you have a great drive, and we will probably see you sometime soon at another one of these events. We'll catch up, and maybe we can tell the story about you falling off the dock and breaking something.
But I did land the fish.
He did land
and
the fish.
release him. Catch and release.
Exactly. You're a
place.
conservationist.
I wish he'd let me go sooner.
Well, Jim, it's been great talking to you. Thanks.
Oh, I'm supposed to say thank you back. You can cut that in, but thanks.
I'll just leave it like that. He'd already set the microphone down. It's always fun talking to Jim Shepard, and we've only scratched the surface on his endless stock of stories, so I hope we can visit with him again in the near future. We hope you're enjoying this podcast, and you'll tell all of your friends, even the liberals. Guns Magazine is #1 in the business, and we're using our decades of friendships to bring you the most interesting chats in the gun world. Make sure you don't miss out on anything by subscribing to us on your favorite podcast directory. And of course, you can listen and download at gunsmagazine.com. Also, don't forget to check out our sister publication, American Handgunner Magazine, at americanhandgunner.com. Well, that's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. For the entire thundering herd and crew at FMG Publications, I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat. Now get out there and get shooting.